What's going on, guys? And welcome back to the Get Back. My name's Daniel, and this is our NHL recap show. And today, we're talking playoffs. We're here. It's finally time. Playoffs start this weekend. It is Saturday, April 18th, 2026. And today, we're going to do a rundown on every first round series, predicting them, and what my thoughts are, and who I think is going to win the series overall. And we'll go little by little, series by series, and we'll see who we think is going to win and advance to the next round. So let's get right into it. We're going to start in the western part of the bracket, and we're going to start with the top team in the NHL, the Colorado Avalanche, against the LA Kings, who sneak in as the final wildcard team in the West. So shout out to LA. I think this was a fun year for them. They did what they needed to do. They did everything that, they pushed at the deadline. They made some big trades, traded for Panarin. It worked out, right? I don't see them beating. To me, they're a sacrificial lamb to Colorado. The Avalanche are just, I feel like, the far superior team. They won the President's Trophy for a reason. Nathan MacKinnon is having a monster year. And I think overall, this is a very, very. I think it shouldn't be a problem for Colorado. I just think they have far too much star power up and down their lineup. Could Artem Panarin take over a game? Sure. Can Anze Kopitar maybe do Sidney Crosby and turn back the clock for his last, hoorah? Maybe. But I only really see the Kings winning a period. I can't see them taking 4 games from this Colorado team. Colorado, swept them in the season series 3-0. Not a very competitive games at all. The LA comes in as one of the lowest scoring teams in the playoffs at 2.6 a game, which is 29th. And the Avs average 3.6, almost 4 goals a game, which is best. I just think everything going into this is just screaming Colorado, the better players. And, it's not like LA doesn't have anything, the Kings don't have anything. Panarin, Kopitar, Turcotte, Quinn Byfield. You have some veteran defensemen, Drew Doughty, Brian Dumoulin, Cody Ceci, Joe Edmondson. You have some veterans on this lineup that, have playoff experience and that know how to get the job done. But I just think Colorado, just the way they've been playing, they have nobody for McKinnon, I feel like LA does. And then you have Kadri, Natchez, Landeskog, Devon Taves, Cale Makar, who by himself could beat this LA Kings team. And I don't mean to sound that pretentious, but I don't believe in this Kings team at all to really make a noise in this series. And again, could they win a game? Maybe, but I don't think they will. I will say the one concerning thing I do have about the Avalanche overall in these playoffs is going to be their goaltending. Whether they roll with Mackenzie Blackwood or Scott Wedgwood. They don't really have a clear number one there. And both guys had a good kind of season-ish. Wedgwood probably has the better numbers, started more games, better save percentage, so kind of lean Wedgwood. But, Scott Wedgwood isn't that big of a household name in terms of the goalie market. He's had a good season, absolutely, but I think it's mainly due to the defense in front of him playing really well, which is all credit to Colorado. I think that's in and of itself is a great accomplishment, what they do defensively. But you kind of need your goalie to steal games in these playoffs. And I don't feel like Scott Wedgwood would be the guy, or Mackenzie Blackwood, are the guy to do that. So it would have to be a very team-oriented effort from Colorado to kind of pick up that slack. Is Scott Wedgwood and Mackenzie Blackwood good goalies? Yeah. Are they going to make key moments and key saves when they matter? I don't think so. I think if you're Colorado, you lean on your stars and you lean on your proven talent in the playoffs. And I think that McKinnon, Natchez, Kadri, Makar, those household names will carry them in the series. I think it's going to be a 4-0 sweep. I don't think LA gets a game. Maybe they win a period. But I really don't believe in this LA team at all. And I think if we're comparing goalies, Darcy Kemper and Anton Forsberg aren't also all that. So I think LA will struggle to score. I think LA will struggle to keep up with Colorado's offense and what they do and what they produce. But I think it's going to be, a somewhat. I don't think any game will be a blowout, but I do think Colorado will come out on top regardless of how well LA play. I think Colorado's just better. So give me Colorado to advance easily here, 4-0 sweep of the Kings. Let's move on to the second first place team in the West, the LA Kings versus the first wild card team. The Vegas Golden Knights, the second first place team against the Utah Mammoths, the first place wild card team. This is a very interesting series. I feel like Utah kind of went under the radar. They had a decent year. Clayton Keller had a fantastic year as captain. Utah won the series 2-1. I think it's gonna be interesting because Vegas is very defense oriented. With John Tortorella as the new head coach, he's gonna implement a defensive first system. Utah like to play fast. They like to push the puck. They like to push the play, and they get a lot of goals that way. For what they have, it's kind of a crazy accomplishment. Kyle Yamamoto has had a resurgence of a year. I feel like a really good year. Patrica's had a really decent year as well. Logan Cooley has been a surprise. There's some decent surprises on this Mammoth team. Nate Schmidt, or not Nate Schmidt. He has a similar name. Nick Schmaltz. Being the leading scorer, or one of the leading scorers. Dion Gontier being the 40 goals, 33 assists, has been a very great surprise for this team. It's interesting, because I do think there are players on the Mammoth who could make some noise in this series. But on paper, when you look at the Knights, Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, Dadorov, Riley Smith, Thomas Hertl, Mitch Marner, Brayden McNabb, Noah Hannafin, they have all of the pieces to kind of win a Stanley Cup. They have a lot of star power on their roster. But I just think Utah's playing a lot better right now than Vegas are. I think Vegas also is kind of still dealing with their coaching change. So it is really an interesting first round series for both teams. Vegas obviously has the pedigree and they have the Stanley Cup experience on that team already, and Utah really doesn't have that. But Utah, even their goaltending is suspect, but so is the Knights. Whether it's Akira Schmidt, Aiden Hill, or Carter Hart, I don't really trust either one of those groupings of three. If it is Akira Schmidt, he's struggled. If it's Aiden Hill, he's struggled. If it's Carter Hart, he's played better recently. But is he a playoff-ready goalie? I don't think so. I don't know. I think this is a very... I will not be surprised if Utah will take this 7 games. I think on paper you pick Vegas. And I think I'm probably going to pick Vegas right now. But I won't be surprised if Utah makes some noise and maybe win a game or 2 or 3. I think this Utah team is very good. I think this Utah team has a decent matchup in the first round against the Knights. It's going to be a tale of 2 different philosophies going forward for both coachings. But I think I'm going to lean, in these situations, I kind of lean towards playoff pedigree, and I lean towards experience, and I lean towards, still having the star players. I think Jack Eichel will step up. I think Mark Stone will make some noise. I think Mitch Marner will show up. Noah Hannafin will make some plays. I think Vegas will do just enough, but I think it will be just enough, and I think it will be 7 games. I think it's going to be the first 7-game series of the first round. I won't be surprised if Utah make some noise and make a game out of this and make a series. I think Utah has all the potential in the world to win this series, but I am going to pick Vegas in 7, which is crazy for a first-round matchup, but I do think Vegas struggles. Their struggles are real. They kind of righted themselves toward the end of the season, and they kind of seem to have something going. But with a new coach, new system, and going up against a really good Utah Mammoth team, I will not be surprised if they drop the ball and maybe they lose this first round series. But, that's just me. But I'm going to go Vegas in 7 here. Moving on now to what I think is another interesting series, the The Edmonton Oilers against the Anaheim Ducks. The 2-3. Anaheim finishing third, Edmonton finishing second. This is interesting because I think Anaheim's a great story. First of all, first player appearance in a long time. A lot of young kids, a lot of veterans as well coming in. Edmonton coming off their Stanley Cup loss in 7, looking to rebound. Had an interesting year, but we're kind of righted their ship towards the end. Edmonton won this series 2-1. I think on paper, everyone kind of leans towards Edmonton. And I think just because of how Anaheim ended the year on kind of a bit of a skid, I won't be surprised by that. Edmonton's really good. I mean, Anaheim's really good, though. They have Leo Carlson is nothing to snooch at. Tavish, Kreider, Killorn, Terry. It's a good mix of veteran leadership and young players, right? And then Rocco Gudas, obviously, as well. Jacob Trouba, John Carlson, making the big trade for John Carlson. I think the sexy pick is Anaheim, right? But Edmonton just still have the best player in the world. They have Connor McDavid. They have Leon Draisaitl, right? They have game changer, Ryan Hopkins, Xperi Kapanen, Trent Frederick, Janmark. They have these players that could make a difference and that could ultimately decide the fate of this first round. Again, it's going to come down to Edmonton's goaltending. And this is the repeated question, whether it's Ingram, Jari, Picard. Probably Ingram to start, maybe Jari. Both haven't really had great years. Both really haven't established themselves as a really, solid number one for Edmonton. And not to say that, Anaheim has depth. I think Lucas Dostal is a bit more solid than Tristan Jarry or Connor Ingram. Right? I like Lucas Dostal. I think he has a lot of potential. I think he's a very young-ish goaltender who's looking to step up in this moment. Now, Tristan Jarry obviously has playoff experience, and Connor Ingram also is a decent goaltender as well. But neither one of them really stand out. And I think when both goaltenders kind of cancel each other out in that regard, I lean towards the proven commodity and the proven offense and the proven team that's done it, and that is Edmonton in this series. And I don't believe that Connor McDavid will want to go out in the first round to Anaheim like this. So I think they are playing with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. I think they are playing with something to play for. Having home ice is important. I won't be surprised if Anaheim take a game, though. I think Anaheim have earned that right, and they've earned that for this year. But I don't see them winning 4 games against this Edmonton team. I don't. So I think in that regard, I am going to pick Edmonton probably. It's either going to be 5 or 6. I'm going to say 5. I think Anaheim do get a game back at home. I either make it 2-1 or 3-1. I don't think they get swept. I think they'll play with some pride and some passion, and they'll play really well. But I think Edmonton just Edmonton. I think Edmonton has a bit more and has a bit more star power and more proven commodities on their team that they'll know how to get the job done. So with that, I am going to pick Edmonton in this one. I think all games are going to be relatively close, but Edmonton will just edge it out by a little bit. So give me Edmonton for this pick here. And moving on to the last first-round matchup in the West, we have the Minnesota Wild against the Dallas Stars, a 2-3. Dallas with home ice in this one. Dallas are the bridesmaid. They were the bridesmaid in their division. They were the bridesmaid in the NHL. It's a really stacked team. Jason Robertson, Jamie Benn, Sam Steele, Rope Hintz, Will Johnson, Matt Bunting. You have a lot of Wyatt Johnson, Tyler Seguin, Matt Duchene still kicking, Mikko Rantanen as well. Heiskanen being hurt could affect them, but Eric Lindell, Tyler Myers, Harley, they have a really talented roster, and then Jake Onger in goal as well. So it's a really good Stars team. And as well, teams also listen to scratch out, Matt Boldy, Zuccarello, Fabry, Tarasenko, Kaprizov, another fantastic year. And then defensively, Fabers, Brodin, Quinn Hughes, making that big trade for Quinn Hughes. Look, I think this is a very interesting matchup. I think it's a lot more closer than people think because the Wild have been playing really well. And the Wild always kind of do this where they're just a really, really good team that gets a bad first round matchup. And while I don't think this is any different, I don't think that the Wild are superior to Dallas. I think this is going to be a closer series than people realize. I think the Wild will put up a really good fight. And I think it goes 6. But I just think, again, there's a goaltending matchup here. Jake Onger has been very consistent. He's been playing really well. And for the Wild, if you're going with Philip Gustafsson or Jasper Wallstedt, who do you pick? Gustafsson obviously has playoff experience. He's a more veteran goaltender. Wallstedt's come in like a man on fire. He's really been electric in that room. But Gustafsson has kind of carried the load for the year and kind of carried that pressure and that mantle as a number one. Even though Wallstedt has better stats in lesser games, sure. It's tough, and I think just that kind of question is what's going to be the difference here. I think Jacob Robinson is the best player in the series by far. I know Kaprizov's also on the other side, but I think Jacob Robinson is better. It's tough because I think this is a fun matchup. I do. I think this is two very even teams in terms of play style and everything going into it, percentages and whatever you want to call it. But I think at the end of the day, again, I can't trust Philip Gustafsson or Jacob Wallstedt in a 7-game series. I know Jake Onger has his problems. I know that he is not all that there sometimes, but I think his team can make up for it. I don't know if this Wild team can do that yet. I think this Wild team maybe is another year away, which is unfortunate because it's a really good team. I think they're a team to watch for the future. But I think Dallas has a chip on their shoulder, something to play for. They have home ice. I think it all lines up for them. And while Minnesota fans are going to revel in another first-round exit, I do think the Dallas Stars do edge it out a little bit, and we get that destined Colorado and Stars second-round matchup. But I am going to pick the Stars here in 6. I think Minnesota do make it close. It may even go 7. I think these teams are very even, and they're not that far apart from each other. But I do think Dallas has a little bit more that'll give them the edge. And Minnesota still has another year to kind of reprocess things and get going. And I think next year's Minnesota team's going to be one to look out for. They're going to be very dangerous. But that's my Western predictions. So you have the Avalanche in 4, the Stars in 6, the Oilers in 6, and Oilers in 5, excuse me, and then the Knights in 7. Moving on to the Eastern Conference, the eastern side of the bracket. The first overall seed, the Carolina Hurricanes, are up against the Ottawa Senators. So shout out to Ottawa. They are the they made it in as the last place team here. Fun team. I like them. I think Ottawa, I believe they were a playoff team. I've seen them play. They play really well, play very upbeat. I think, Brady Tkachuk is an enigma as a player. And they also have, Tim Schutzler is also a really great talent. They have Claude Giroux, who has a veteran presence on that team as well. Nick Jensen, Thomas Chabot. Linus Ullmark, who's had a really good year as a goaltender. I think he's a really solid goaltender. Unfortunately, it's all a moot point because because Carolina is just the best unspoken team in the league. That's the best way I could put it. They just, again, are regular season warriors. They just keep winning games. 53 wins. I mean, they were dominant this year. And while I know playoffs are a different beast, I know their playoff success is up and down. It very much wavers. I don't see them having a struggle against Ottawa. I think Ottawa's still a younger team. I think that matters here. I think it's important to remember that, young players in their first playoff experience kind of struggle. So I won't be surprised if we see that from this Ottawa team. Now, they do have some veteran presence, absolutely, but I do think Carolina, I keep saying Colorado. Carolina has been there, done that. I think they have a point to prove. Now, again, this may be their last chance because you can't keep up with having a second round or, a conference final exit every year. You have to eventually make the Stanley Cup final. This has to be their year to do that, right? I think with all that pressure and that expectation, and being the first overall seed in the East, that comes with the expectation of winning your first round series pretty easily, and I think they will. I think Ottawa may take a game just because of Carolina's ineptitude in playoffs, just kind of leaking out of me. But I do think Carolina just has the better team, better player, Sebastian Aho, obviously. And then it comes down to their goaltending again. Brendan Rossi had a very underrated year. He was 31-6-2 with a 2.7 goals against, but a 8.95 save percentage, which is not that great. So he had the wings, but he did not have the save percentage, which I think is a bit alarming. But penalty kill at 80%, really good. Goals for, almost 4, really good. Goals against, just 3. I think it's a very good Hurricane team. Aho, Stahl, Jarvis, Ehlers, Shevchenko, Hall, Jankowski, Gostisbehere, Riley, Miller, Niskanen, Slavin. Like, this is a stacked Carolina team. This has to be the year they do something. And if it's not, you have to tear it all down. Because it's like, how many times are we going to go through this? This is a very, very stacked Carolina team. I think they take care of business. I think they handle Ottawa in 5. Second round, though, we'll see. Moving on to the other first-place team. I guess the surprise first-place team, the Buffalo Sabres, will go head-to-head with the Boston Bruins in the first round. Boston had a very fun year. Boston had a very, consistent year. Do what they need to do. They're back in the playoffs. Jeremy Swayman had a very good year as a goaltender. Boston played pretty well. Middlestat had a good year. Geeky had almost a 40-goal season. Probably should have got 40 goals. Sean Corrali, very good player. Victor Arvidsson, very good player. David Pastrnak doing his thing. 100-point season. So it's like they have the players. They do. But the story. The Buffalo Sabres, man. What a story they are. We can't say enough of how amazing the accomplishment this is for Buffalo. Almost, 20-plus years without playoff appearance. Constant rebuilding, constant first overall pick bust, constant draft failures. Finally, they have a team they can be proud of. They finally have a team that plays really well. And, there's not a lot of star power on the team. Everyone knows Tage Thompson. Everybody knows Alex Tuch. But then you have guys like Jason Zucker who've come out of nowhere and had a resurgence. You have Tyler Kozak, who's been a very gutty player. Ryan McLeod has been a very gutty player. You have Bo Byram, who's a very solid defenseman now. Luke Schenn, who came over, is a very solid defenseman. Owen Power is a very solid defenseman. And, Rasmus Dahlin, who's been there from the start, is also pretty good. So it's a very, very, very interesting story. It's a very interesting situation because I do think Boston obviously has their pedigree, and I lean towards that. And Jeremy Swayman, I think, is a better goaltender against Alex Leon and Pekka Luukkonen. But Jukka Pekka-Luukkonen has just been the reason. He's been the reason why, Buffalo's in this position. I think them finally figuring out their goaltending. Finally getting something consistent. And, Alex Lyon's a pretty good, solid goaltender as well. I think Pekkanen is better. That helps. This is a tough one. This is a tough series. I think, look at the head-to-head. Boston won the head-to-head 3-1. 2 of them went to overtime, though, so could have went either way there. These are 2 very even teams. I think I think let's have fun. Buffalo in 6. Let's have fun. Why not? Right? It's my show. Buffalo in 6. Let's have some fun. I think, their story continues. They continue to prove their point. Tage Thompson has a great series here. Brings the city of Buffalo back to life in hockey wise. Yeah, I think Boston, they'll play with pride. I think, they'll win games. They'll keep games close. But I like Buffalo. I'm feeling, my gut is telling me Buffalo, so I'm going Buffalo. Why not? Hell yeah. Let's go Buffalo, sure. I like that. Yeah, I'm trying to find a reason against it, and I can't. Buffalo in 6. Yeah, let's move on to the next series. We really don't have nothing else to add on to that. Let's move on to the other Metropolitan 2-3 here. The Pittsburgh Penguins against the surprise Philadelphia Flyers, who sneak in as the 3rd seed, beating out the Islanders, Capitals, Blue Jackets, Detroit, my mother, my sister, my father, your brother, your sister, your mother, your brother, your sister, his cousin, my cousin, his cousin, for that Metropolitan 3rd place spot. The Flyers, they come out on top. Yeah. Pittsburgh is a fun story. Obviously, Sid and Malkin having resurgences, and that team overall, playing with a lot of heart. Anthony Mantha, Achari, Ricard Raquel finally having a decent year. Ryan Graves, Chris Letang still doing his thing. Eric Carlson doing his thing. Stuart Skinner had a great year goaltending wise. They're a fun story. I think it's out of what was a absolute wild west of a Metropolitan division. Them coming second is a standing point. It's something of worthy merit. Yeah, I like Pittsburgh here. I think Philly's cool. I think Philly's a lot of fun. I think Philly is the hottest team right now. That's why they got in, right? I think that's part of it too. Todd Konechny had a great year. Yeah, I mean, Owen Tippett again having almost a 30-goal year helps. Travis Sanheim, Drysdale. I mean, it's a fun team. I don't think they're better than Pittsburgh. I don't. I don't see a world where the Flyers take 4 games from Pittsburgh here, and they tied the series. And listen, this is going to be a fun series. This is a derby, pretty much, for both teams. This goes beyond rivalry. This is a heated rivalry. There's going to be fists. There's going to be boos. The Philadelphia is going to be an absolute dumpster. It's going to be great. Have playoff hockey back there because that atmosphere is, electric, toxic, and fun. So that's going to be great. Pittsburgh's going to be having, the same kind of vibe. So it's going to be a fun series. I just think on the ice, the Penguins have more class and they have more skill, and they just are the better overall team. They have the better overall players. They have the experience. This Flyer team is still young. There really isn't a standout veteran on their roster that I can, really give them credit for, compared to like Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. So I don't really see the Flyers doing too much of note against this team. So I think Pittsburgh do come away with the win. I think they just have the better team overall. I think the Flyers take a game, though. I think you just have to kind of say that because it is Pittsburgh Philly, so I don't imagine a sweep here. But I think Pittsburgh in 5 is fair. I think Pittsburgh are just the better team overall. Every game's going to be an absolute bloodbath, which is going to be fun to watch. But I think Pittsburgh, when the dust settles and the fisticuffs end, Pittsburgh will find its way on top, and the Penguins will advance to the next round. So I am going to pick Pittsburgh here in 5. I think it's the easier pick. It's the safer pick. It's the pick that makes the most sense. So I am going to pick the Pittsburgh Penguins in 5 over the Philadelphia Flyers. And moving on to our last matchup here, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning against the Montreal Canadiens. So Montreal back in the playoffs for the first time in a while. Lightning, the 2 seed, Canadiens, the 3 seed. This is I want to say this is an interesting matchup because I think, Tampa Bay, I think, are the best team in the Eastern Conference. I do. Right? I've said that. I'm keeping consistent with that. That is who I think is the overall better seed. I think they just did not play as well as they should have down the stretch. But I think they always find a way, right? That's their mentality. They always find a way, and I see this being no different. I think they have the best goalie probably in the entire playoffs in Andrei Vasilevsky. If he stays healthy, I don't see them having a problem. Jacob Dobes is a fun goalie. I think he's had a great year, but I don't see him. I don't see him taking 4 games. And I can see Vasilevsky winning a series. I can see Vasilevsky shutting the door multiple times on Canadian players. And yeah, Cole Caulfield had a great year, right? Nick Suzuki had a out of nowhere 100-point season. Patrick Laine to get hearts that really didn't help them, but you got Lane Hudson who probably should win for Rookie of the Year. So they have talent. It's not like the Canadiens don't, but I think they're still too young. I think they're going up against a veteran, battle-hardened, experienced playoff team. And I'm always going to lean towards that playoff experience in these situations. I think John Cooper is... I wouldn't say better, but I think he's the coach that can handle situations better than... Yeah, I think John Cooper's a better coach. I think John Cooper's a better coach here. I think he'll get the guys where they need to get to. I think they don't have a problem with Montreal. They tied the series 2-2 throughout the year, but some of those games were close. One of them was a shootout. One of them was a 2-1 win. So take with that what you will. But I don't see Montreal taking 4 games from the Tampa Bay team. I don't think anybody really can, honestly. But I am going to say this. I think if Tampa Bay stays healthy, and that if all their players step up and they keep doing what they're doing, Kucherov, I think they have the best goaltender in this whole playoffs. They are a very scary team. But they are susceptible. They have not been playing great. They didn't end the season great. It's why Buffalo won, their series and won out the division. So there are holes in this Tampa Bay Lightning team. It's not perfect, but I think it's good enough, right? So I am going to say they are going to beat the Montreal Canadiens. I think it's going to be in 5. Let's say 5. I think 5 is fair. I think 5 is a fair matchup. Montreal, LaBelle Center is going to be buzzing. That place is going to be back in playoff hockey. They're going to be absolutely ruthless up there. Tampa Bay has a great home crowd as well come playoff time. So yeah, I think Tampa Bay do have the team to beat Montreal, but again, Montreal, they're sneaky, but they're not there yet. They're still young. They'll get the experience. They'll learn. They'll get better. Montreal's not there yet, but they will be. They will be. They have Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Lane Hudson. Those are great talents. They'll build around it. They'll grow. They'll get better. This is not their moment yet. Tampa Bay will take care of them. They'll treat them with class, and I think they'll just move on to the next round. And I think it's going to be struggle is not the word I'm looking for, but it's going to be relatively calm in this series. So, give me Tampa Bay in 5. I think that's fair. So just to review and recap, I'll have the Hurricanes beating the Senators in 5. The Sabres beating the Bruins in 6. The Lightning beating the Canadiens in 5, and then the Penguins beating the Flyers. I'm gonna say 5. I'm gonna say 5. Yeah, 5. So that's going to do it for my first round playoff prediction bracket. We'll come back next week to see where some teams are at. It might still be playing some games. It might still be some series might be over by that point. But we'll see where we're at next week. We'll see how predictions are going. See how teams are playing. It's the playoffs. Anything can happen. We've seen a lot of great stuff happen in the playoffs. So get a lot of fun. This is the best time of year. Best time to watch hockey. Numbers, ratings, high hits. Goals, players, fun, hockey. It's great. Thank you guys for watching. I've been Daniel. This has been the Hockey Recap Show. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Check out other stuff. Check out our main show coming up on Sunday. It's going to be great. Going to be fun. Make sure you check out our live streams as well. And stay tuned for other great content. I've been Daniel. I'm on the Get Back. See you guys next time. Peace.